Hello again. Well, by now, I think probably if you've watched some of my videos on the end times, you are convinced that God speaks through the moon, the cycles of the moon, the tetrads being the eclipses on feast days, Jewish feast days. I've had lots and lots of people viewing these things, viewing these videos. So I know there's a big interest and I'm trying to meet that interest. Now I just want to read to you about the end times from Luke 21. Jesus said when he was asked about the end times, he said there will be signs in the sun, moon and stars. Sun, moon and stars. Now, you remember that when Jesus was born, the wise men came looking for him, bringing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. These are well-known passages from Luke. Now, when they came looking for Jesus, the star stopped at Bethlehem. Now, that star was probably the king's star. In other words, it wasn't really a star, it was a planet. And that planet was probably Jupiter, which looks like a star. It's the biggest of the planets. It could have been Jupiter, it could have been Jupiter in collusion or in association with Regulus. Now you'll see Regulus in a minute. Now, why am I telling you about stars? Because one of the greatest signs that we are in the end times is shown in Revelation chapter 12. Now, in Revelation chapter 12, what I'm going to read to you has never, ever happened apart from one time in history, once. And when was that? Now, I've got this on a steadying piece of card, so I think you can see it quite well. It happened on the 23rd of September, which just happened to be Rosh Hashanah, just happened to be the Feast of Trumpets. Now you will see there's a constellation known as Leo, which is representative of Christ, and Virgo, which is representative of the Virgin Mary. Now I'll come to that in a minute, but you'll notice that the sun is there, and you'll notice in the Leo top corner there are 9 permanent stars in Leo, and there are 3 others which have joined in, Mercury, Mars and Venus, which of course are not usually in the constellation, but they are planets and they lined up. Never ever happened before. Let me read this to you from Revelation chapter 12. There will be a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. Her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God that should feed her there 1,260 days, 3.5 years. Now, we're going to look at this in a bit more detail, but I want you to be prepared to, study this for yourself. Go online, have a look. I've got this chart from one of the prophets that I follow. You can see his name there. It's called Jimmy Evans, just below my finger there. Jimmy Evans. Now, the constellations, people say constellations, Leo, Virgo. I meet some people and say, well, what star sign are you? are you born under David? And I say, well, I don't really take much notice of star signs, you know, that's kind of new age. Let me read you from Job chapter 38 and put a little bit of information into this. I'm not going to get very far in this, it's just an introduction today. But Job 38, after Job is getting his explanation from God about all he suffered, God is saying, were you there? And he said in verse 32, Job 38:32, can you lead forth the signs of the zodiac in their season? Can you guide the stars of the bear and her young? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? And can you establish their rule upon the earth? See, God knows about the constellations. In fact, verse 31, I should have read that as well. Can you bind the chains of the cluster of stars or loose the cords of the constellation Orion? So God made these 12 constellations. They're not evil. They've been given an evil twist because astrology is where each constellation is assigned a kind of spiritual significance. I'm just talking about astronomy, the fact that these star signs are in place, and they are in place to tell us about events that God is going to do. Now, this star constellation of Virgo is Mary, and she had, if you see, I'll just show Virgo again. Virgo had the sun at her head. You just about see it's very faint. It's not a great thing. Find a better picture for yourself on the internet. Virgo had the sun at her shoulder and the moon, there look, the moon at her feet. Now look out for Jupiter. Jupiter is there. Jupiter is the king planet, and Jupiter spent 42 months inside the womb area of the constellation Virgo. I'll have to pick this up tomorrow, but this is fascinating. This has never ever happened before, and it happened, as I say, on the Feast of Trumpets in 2017. It's a sign we are in the end times.